Couple things I want to get to today. A little bit of a new wrinkle in the Dianna Russini story. There was a new bit of information and some photos that were dropped by Page Six, I believe it was yesterday, that I sort of had a new angle to discuss it from and consider it from, that are somewhat interesting, at least during these somewhat boring times in the sports calendar. And then another thing I wanted to get to was a discussion about this NBA draft lottery that happened. I think it was this past weekend, and just some funny things that I noticed from it, and sort of some conclusions I was making, some thoughts that I was having, I guess you could say. Okay, so one thing I'm noticing with this story is that it is losing traction a little bit, in the sense that the new photo drops, unless they add a new element, they take it to another level in terms of the salaciousness of it, of the actual photos themselves, then they don't really capture our attention quite like the first ones did, and I guess that's to be expected. But for example, there was, I think maybe Sunday, or it might even have been on Mother's Day, or possibly yesterday, there was a photo drop, aside from the new wrinkle that I also want to discuss today. There was just a sort of more run-of-the-mill photo drop where you see Dianna, I think it was from maybe 2022. It was a picture from 2022. You see Dianna Russini with her arm around Vrabel in sort of, somewhat of an intimate way. Not really, like, again, and it wasn't anything all that bad, but it was just another photo drop that sort of lends to the narrative that's people have somewhat accepted with them. And I think the reason that it doesn't really capture our attention quite as much now is because people have accepted at this point. There is somewhat of a public consensus that there was an affair there. They were doing this. It appears both the spouses know. So there is an element, I think, in some people's minds of like, what else are we really digging into here? Okay, so this new story that came out actually on Mother's Day afternoon, which is a little bit like, jeez, what are we doing here? Someone was following her around on Mother's Day. And I don't think it really says where these photos came from, just their source, I guess, or someone they were able to obtain them from. I guess probably a paparazzi of some kind. Dianna Russini kisses husband on Mother's Day as pair is seen for the first time since Mike Vrabel scandal. So this is Dianna Russini. She's holding her kid and kissing Kevin Goldschmidt, the man that she is, presumptively, or has been presumptively cheating on with Mike Vrabel, or allegedly, I guess I should say. And so, this is the man that is her actual husband. Okay, so I think the first inclination when you see them kiss, or you see him kissing her or whatever, is to think like, oh, okay, maybe they made up, or he's somewhat accepted it. And there was quite a bit of reaction that was sort of taking it that way. And a lot of people were like chastising him, like, oh man, how could you take her back? It's just, it's so weak. Reflects poorly on men. Which to an extent, which I can understand to an extent, if that's truly what's happening here, is he's taken her back and he's just gonna forgive her. Like, I would agree to an extent that is somewhat weak. But I can also understand someone just doing anything that he thinks is gonna create the most normalcy for their kids, right? Like, even if that means he looks a little weak, or like he's a step over, a pushover, or he's just I guess what some people would call a cuck. I don't necessarily view it that way, just because there's the kids involved. I can understand any behavior that a man would do to try to make things more comfortable for his kids, or try to protect his kids from having to learn certain things that might damage them, right? So, but I also understand those that are sort of calling him weak or whatever. It's a perfectly understandable reaction to this. However, I think if you look at these photos, like, if you really look at these photos, and you just think about the context that it's Mother's Day, right? Well, just first of all, if you just look at him, like, and I don't know if there's any more, there's these ones too. If you just look at him, and especially like in this one, and just like the kiss is not necessarily like right on the lips, it's more of like a side kiss. Face not all that smiling, happy to see her, somewhat of like a side hug. I think his body language is sending some signals that like he's not totally into this, that this might be somewhat of a formality, right? And if you consider that she has the kid in her hand and this is Mother's Day, the other thing to consider is that this is outside. They're greeting each other outside of like a house on Mother's Day, right? So you would think if everything was all good in the neighborhood, they would be inside a house together on Mother's Day with the kids, right? Like, this seems like almost it could be somewhat of a kid handoff on Mother's Day, right? Like, this, you could interpret this, given that they're outside and they're greeting each other, that on Mother's Day, that like he's handing the kid off to her or she's handing the kid off to him because they're not spending it together, right? Like, she's taking the kids over to her parents, and now she's gonna hand them off to him, and he's gonna take them over to his parents or whatever, his mother's, and they're just having this brief greeting, and he just wants to make it seem like it's okay, like everything's all good, so the kid doesn't question anything, right? Maybe he's just being a good guy because it's Mother's Day, right? Like, you could just interpret it as that as well. As he's just having respect for her as a mother on that day, regardless of how he feels about her for some larger situation. I mean, yeah, he's just like, you look at this face right here is the damning one, right? It just doesn't look like he's all that into the situation. I mean, who knows? He could have also just seen the photographer, right? And he didn't want to, like, he knew what the story would become if it seemed like he was like, he didn't want anything to do with her. So he saw that photographer, you know, it's possible he saw the photographer and he was like, okay, I gotta make this seem like everything's normal, everything's all good. Just because he doesn't appreciate the story either, right? Like, he doesn't, he's probably, I'm sure, getting a lot of unwanted attention too, just for being a tangential part of this. Okay, so let's read some of the details here. Dianna Russini and her husband, Kevin Goldschmidt, were photographed kissing on Mother's Day in their first public sighting since her scandal with Mike Vrabel. Pictures exclusively obtained by Page Six show the former ESPN reporter and Shake Shack executive warmly embracing each other outside their New Jersey home on Sunday. Russini, who said "I do" to Goldschmidt in 2020, appeared to be carrying the youngest of their two sons on her hip. People in the community have said they've been very resilient as a family, a source told Page Six of the married duo, who have been seen together at activities for their kids and other family occasions throughout the scandal. They haven't been in hiding, the source added. My sort of instant reaction to this article, people in the community have said they have been very resilient as a family. They haven't been hiding. Well, the headline of this story is Dianna Russini kisses husband on Mother's Day as pair is seen for the first time since Vrabel scandal. If they haven't been in hiding, then why is this the first time they've been seen? Like, that doesn't really make any sense. They clearly have been in hiding, right? Because reporters and paparazzi would be all over them in public trying to get quotes. Like, we'd have some video of a camera being in Dianna Russini's face and her getting peppered with questions. We got that from Mike Vrabel. Remember, he was at the airport and someone was, I think it was TMZ, some person got in his face with a video camera and was asking him questions, and he just like kept his face straight and went right to his car. You'd get one of those from Dianna Russini if they hadn't been hiding, right? Or if they'd been together, you know, they've been resilient as a family, seen together at activities for their kids and other family occasions. There'd be photos of that. So like, that just sounds like bullshit to me. This was the other little bit that was, and there were some different variations of this story and some different analysis going on about previous reports from Dianna Russini that people are now viewing as like, was this like maybe some type of tampering going on when she was an NFL insider and she would be releasing reports on players and stuff going on. And so this was an article from Bro Bible. New report highlights how the alleged Dianna Russini-Mike Vrabel affair may have altered the course of history for the AFC South and the NFL at large. So, the alleged affair between Dianna Russini and Mike Vrabel may have altered the course of modern AFC South history. The most well-reported aspect of the story ties 2022 NFL draft, in which Russini, who was scheduled to be in Indianapolis to cover the draft for ESPN, instead stayed in Nashville. Vrabel was the head coach of the Titans at the time. The following year, Stanley reports that Russini published a tweet, which she later deleted, in addition to purging her entire X and Twitter account and making her Instagram private, claiming the Titans had withdrawn their trade offer to the Arizona Cardinals for the number 3 pick after C.J. Stroud was selected. The Houston Texans, seemingly reacting to Russini's report about Tennessee's interest in the then Ohio State quarterback, traded back up to number 3 to select Will Anderson Jr., surrendering further draft capital in the process. In his first year in the NFL, Stroud was named to the Pro Bowl and voted as Offensive Rookie of the Year, while also quarterbacking the Texans in 3 straight postseason appearances. If Stanley's reporting is accurate, That means that Vrabel's alleged information leak didn't just help Russini break news, but it actively influenced other franchises' draft decisions. Again, it's a bit harder to follow, but essentially what it is alluding to is information that was reported by Dianna Russini that was fed to her from Mike Vrabel being picked up by other teams, and then that influencing their draft decisions, even though the information was BS or was altered or was only got to them because Vrabel wanted it to get to them through Dianna Russini, right? So now I'm not sure if this is tampering or if the NFL would have any interest in punishing Vrabel for something like this. I can't imagine they would, but I think that you can understand like how other teams or even colleagues would take offense to something like this. Name any team that doesn't like the Patriots or doesn't like Mike Vrabel or has a reason to hate either one of those parties. You can now it starts to broaden the field in terms of who potentially was the one that initially executed or initially provided the photos or provided the impetus for someone to report these photos into Page 6 that started this entire story. At any point had come in contact with Vrabel or a team that he was the head coach of and felt like they had gotten screwed over or misled by information that was released to Dianna, that was given to Dianna Russini by Vrabel in order to influence that other team or party, right? Like you can understand why they would be upset about that and want to get back at them. And if they knew about this untoward relationship going on, who's to say they didn't? They weren't the ones sort of making sure that the photos reached the people that they needed to reach in order to get them found out, or maybe they're behind some of the secondary dumps and drops and sort of the escalation of the story, right? Okay, so the other thing that I wanted to talk about here was the NBA draft lottery, which happened this past weekend. Basically, the prizes that are up for grabs in the lottery are the first, second, third, and fourth pick, right? And the bottom 14 teams in the league all get a small percentage chance of getting one of those picks. And the worse that you are, the further down in the standings that you are, the larger percentage chance that you get. So let's say there's 100 ping pong balls. The worst team gets a larger number of those ping pong balls assigned to them, so that if that ping pong ball pops up, they win the number one pick, or whatever pick is up for grabs at that point. So if we just look at the NBA draft order here, as decided by the recent draft lottery, you'll notice that the Washington Wizards were able to get the number one pick, followed by the Utah Jazz and the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, I do think it's worth noting that, and although it doesn't happen exactly this way every year, it often looks like this, where if you notice, the teams that tanked the hardest indeed got rewarded with the best picks, right? Like the Washington Wizards, absolute worst team in the league this year. Well, they got the number one pick. So, and then the Utah Jazz, the worst team in the Western Conference, right? They got the second pick. It tells you exactly why teams tank, right? Because it works. When you tank and you give yourself that better chance to get the number one overall pick, a lot of times you do get rewarded by getting the number one overall pick. So now this is obviously a very, basic sort of fundamental way of looking at things. But if you just look at the way things ended up this year, the teams that tanked got the number one, they did themselves a solid by doing that because they've rewarded themselves and their fans with better odds to get a great player in the NBA draft. And indeed, if you look at the prospects for this year's NBA draft, and I mentioned a bit of this in one of my other videos, there's some really attractive players that these teams are trying to get their hands on. The small forward from BYU, who was a freshman this year but still a dominant player in NCAA Division I, AJ DeBonza, and I think most people see him as sort of the top prize and the likely number one overall pick. But this guy Darren Peterson, a lot of people have compared him unironically to Kobe Bryant, and if you got to see him play at all this year, he was pretty amazing. He would just pretty much score at will. He looked faster than everybody. He looked like he could jump higher, and he just looked more confident. He's just a really confident scorer. And then I'm sure everyone probably got a chance to watch Cameron Boozer, who's obviously the power forward at Duke. freshman, son of Carlos Boozer, who played in the NBA, so has has a lot of pedigree. And obviously Cameron played with his brother on Duke. I think his brother's name is Caden Boozer, who I don't think is an NBA prospect this year. But in my opinion, Cameron Boozer's not quite as good as the other two, Devonta and Peterson. He just didn't look quite as fluid with everything. He looked like he could get bottled up somewhat by college players at times. But both of these two just looked, for the most part, just so dominant. And then you just add the athletic physical attributes of someone like Devonta, 6'9", 7-foot wingspan, and a 42-inch vertical. And he's only a freshman, right? It's just, it's hard to ignore those physical attributes. And then again, if you watched him play, it's just such a smooth game. So there's some real prizes here, right? And that's why the team's tanked, because they're trying to get one of these guys. You can basically assume that next year, unless the rules, change in a significant way that truly deters teams from tanking, which, again, we don't really have a great idea of what that would look like. We have proposals from the NBA that are so confusing and so ridiculous, like you can't finish reading them. But unless something like that comes around quickly, you're going to have teams tanking again next year. There's no doubt about it. And it's not just these three either. I mean, there's a lot of others. You have Keaton Wagler from Illinois. Caleb Wilson was the UNC kid. Darius Acuff, the kid from Arkansas. And Kingston Flemings from Houston. Now, all these guys are really, really good players that you might have seen play in the NCAA tournament. And then there's the international guys as well. This guy Adai Mara is supposed to be really good, a big center. An unusual big with excellent passing, skilled ball handling, a 66.8 field goal percentage, vaulted himself into first-round territory with his size and skill mix. You're going to see a lot of these teams that tanked get rewarded this year with amazing young players that probably can play significant minutes next year, and that's just going to motivate more teams to tank. So, and I've mentioned this before, it's just this is a huge problem the NBA has on its hands, and I think one thing that was really scary about that is the person that's in charge, Adam Silver, has proven he really has no idea how to deal with this stuff. This was something funny I wanted to show you. This was from the draft lottery this past weekend, and the draft lottery is just a bit ridiculous because a lot of these, basically what they're doing is, they're having a representative from each team go up on stage, and then they reveal to everyone, what the lottery has determined the order to be. So the first thing they do is they reveal picks 14 through 5. So really you don't want your team to be mentioned in these, because that means that you're not getting one of the top 4 picks. It's just so funny. This is just like people just like looking disappointed.
The 13th pick will be made by the Miami Heat.
And Alonzo Mourning just like
Picking 12th in the NBA draft will be the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Remember, the Thunder, they received this pick from the Clippers because of the Paul George trade in
this
2019.
guy's trying not to act pissed.
The 11th pick belongs to the Golden State Warriors.
So mad.
Pick number 10 will be made by the Milwaukee Bucks.
He's just like that is such a memeable face. He's like, really?
The 9th
Really?
pick in the NBA draft belongs to the Dallas Mavericks.
So that means that Chicago
God.
has jumped into the top 4.
Okay, this is the other thing. You just heard the announcer say that means Chicago's jumped into the top 4 because of some convoluted rules that no one understands, where the Chicago somehow got into the top 10, they were guaranteed the top 4. So I don't know how that works out or what they did to get that. No one's quite sure, but just trust us. Chicago's in the top 4.
The 8th pick goes to the Atlanta Hawks.
Remember, Atlanta, they received this pick from New Orleans due to the Derek Queen trade last year.
Pick number 7 will be made by the Sacramento Kings.
That means that Memphis
Oh
has
my
also
God,
jumped
look at
into the
this
top
guy.
4.
Oh no, he's got in the top
Picking
4. He should
6
be at.
is the Brooklyn Nets.
That means that Utah is going to be in the
Oh, it's Vince Carter. It's Vince Carter, just like completely fed up. Thought he might get number 1 pick. Nope, you're getting the 6th pick. So if you're a Nets fan, you're probably looking at one of these four guys: Wagler, Wilson, Acuff, or Flemings. Which, again, you know, Vince Carter doesn't look too happy in this, but getting in the top 6 is pretty good. Acuff could turn out to be the best one of all these kids. Wilson could turn out to be the best one of all these kids easily. I don't think anyone would really be all that surprised by any of that.
Joining us once again to announce the order of the top 4 picks is NBA Deputy Commissioner and Chief Operating Officer Mark Tatum.
Thanks again, Malika. The 4th pick in the NBA draft goes to the Chicago Bulls. The 3rd pick will be made by the Memphis Grizzlies.
He was thinking he was going to
Picking
get number
second
1.
will be the Utah Jazz, and that means
there's
that the
John
number
Wall.
1 pick in the 2026 NBA draft goes to the Washington Wizards.
Typical John Wall, doesn't look like he
The
cares.
Washington Wizards win the 2026 NBA Draft Lottery. Remember, they made
He said that guy's happy. He's like, we're getting to Bonsa. Or maybe they'll get Peterson. Who knows? It's hard to say. Peterson had the thing swirling around him this year where he wasn't playing all that much, and a lot of people thought it was due to his agent wanting to just sort of save the wear and tear and not risk injury playing for Kansas, when it's in all likelihood he's just going to be getting on with his NBA career next year. That could end up being why DeBonsa goes 1 and Peterson goes 2. But if you just watch Peterson in the moments that he did play, I think I think anyone would be comfortable saying that he was maybe a little bit better than DeBonsa. But again, we'll only know on draft night. When is the NBA draft? Held over 2 nights on June 23rd and 24th, right? So yeah, after the playoffs. Okay, so we'll know then. So I'll be interested to see if during this next few weeks, while the NBA is kind of in the spotlight with the playoffs, if they announce anything as far as their revised rules that are supposed to address tanking, or how they plan to address that situation. A lot of times they'll take advantage of the spotlight of the finals in order to make announcements like that. So possible we'll get some information and possibly an update on how that's going to look next year, how they plan to curb tanking. Because again, at this point, it seems only sensible that if you're a team that doesn't have much of a chance to make the playoffs or make a good run, you would just tank because you want to get one of these great players. As far as the Russini Vrabel story goes, I feel like we'll probably get more. I feel like it's not over. If they have any more ammo, they're probably just going to continue to slow drip it to us. Especially if it's if the point of it is to try to take down Vrabel, they haven't succeeded yet. So my guess is they're gonna empty the chamber. And obviously, also you have the possibility of Dianna Russini making some comments of her own, or releasing a video or something, where she addresses her side of the story. She hasn't done anything like that yet, but that's, obviously something that would give the story a new surge of life. So if anything like that happens, we will certainly talk about it here. Thanks to anyone that's listening.